Hello, welcome to the We in Wellness Conversations and Meditations with Dr. K. Hi. Hey, Douglas. Welcome to the We in Wellness. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Kate. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I know who you are because we've been very good friends for a very long time. But would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Douglas Valdez. I am a licensed mental health counseling associate, a Chinese medical practitioner, assistant professor, and core faculty at St. Cloud University in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I am a sex therapist and, yeah, and I guess an overall mental health and healer type person.
Wow. It's like I know, and still every time I hear the list, I'm like, wait, and he's still going.
Right. It's a long list, unfortunately. I'm tired. That just means I'm tired, right? It's a long
Okay.
list.
Okay. All right. Well, clearly we're going to need to talk about self-care practices.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but I almost forgot about the sex therapy part. How and why did you get
Y-
into that?
Yeah, it was very interesting because working in Chinese medicine and talking to patients who were part of the kink community and who were part of BDSM community, there was a lot of conversation around being embarrassed about going to see a medical doctor and discussing certain things. And so I felt it was a little out of my scope to have certain conversations about different things. Obviously, it's within my scope to speak to Chinese medicine and treating people for certain conditions, but having other conversations around intimacy and sex and relationships. And so that kind of brought me to wanting to pull that thread a little bit and get more information about that, and then led me to a certificate in sex therapy.
Wow. Okay. Um, I'm so nosy. Have
Yeah.
you had interesting cases with sex therapy?
I have. I think that overall, being part of the queer community myself and being part of the queer kink community myself,
Mhm.
I find that um, interesting can be subjective because then all of it just kind of seems like it's what we do and what part of my
Yeah,
community.
people are people. I get it.
Absolutely, right? And so people have different interests. Um, but yeah, there's been a couple of pretty interesting cases that I've talked to people about in terms of connecting with their partners and uh, having conversations about BDSM and maybe that could be considered abuse in other relationships, but is actually not. It's very
Mm,
consensual. So, that could be seen as maybe more interesting, in terms of therapy and supporting the client. Yeah.
nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, I am very glad and grateful that someone as yourself exists to support these people. Um, because as a therapist, for me, when I get a sex therapy client, I I get a little frozen. I get a little, oh, like I'm happy to speak about it in the context of mental health and everything that's going on, but when it comes to the deep nuances of, I guess, emboldening those types of connections without the certificate, it's not my niche.
Mm.
But I have clients um, who, because they've worked with me before, prefer to come back and they want me to work on that. So
Right.
I might be consulting you on a case later.
Absolutely. And I mean, it just speaks to the rapport you've built with your clients to be able to have those intimate conversations because I think a lot of clients don't realize or don't think they can talk about the more personal, intimate kind of relationships with their partners. And it doesn't have to be sex necessarily, it can just be intimacy and connection, and how important that is to just our overall healing and well being to being able to connect with your partner. So, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. um, but yeah, you're a very helpful resource
Yeah, absolutely.
to myself as a counselor and of course your clients. Um, and you're a teacher. So there's a lot of connection through the many the many lives you have lived in education. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little more about that path or journey or what you're hoping to focus on now?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. It kind of being a queer Latina person, a Chicano, Chicanx person, I
Mhm,
find that um I found it like there was a deficit in terms of counselor education related to working with marginalized populations, specifically the identities I just mentioned. And
mhm,
so when I was going through my master's program, I kind of saw that there was that missing piece. I started talking to people about it who were in academia and having conversations around it. And they said, we should really think about getting a PhD in counselor education because there isn't a lot of marginalized populations in general with PhDs overall, and then even smaller in counselor education. So that kind of led me to wanting to teach. And then when I started teaching, I really realized much um how much there was a missing piece in counselor education in terms of the intersectional identities of people and sexuality and connection and all of the things. Like it's
mhm,
just basically a very foundational knowledge for clinicians, but unless they do continuing education, there's um, not a lot of extra information to support their education, to support everyone, if that makes sense, hopefully.
mhm. It does, it does. So
Okay.
you are focusing on educating counselors because you see the gap, you see the need. Um, I guess I'm wondering, is that why you're in Minnesota?
That is exactly why I'm in Minnesota. So I've only been in Minnesota for a couple of months now, and it's turned out to be, um, it's very white. I'm just going to name it and say that it's very white. And right. And so, but it's been a very good experience in terms of I don't feel unsafe. I don't feel like there is there isn't a lot of Latin people necessarily, and that's where it feels a little uh, isolating. But otherwise, I don't feel unsafe.
Okay, okay. So it's yeah, I'm gonna dig into this a little. So it's
Sure.
isolating in the sense of, um, maybe not having people to speak Spanish with or access to common things that would feel homey to you, maybe? Is that what you mean?
That is, yes, and so yes, there
Okay.
isn't a lot of grocery stores. There isn't a lot of panaderias to come and get, the pan that I love, and more of like my Mexican things. But there are some, and I found that a lot of my students who, I won't say a lot, but maybe 5 or 6 of my students that I teach speak Spanish, and they're not Latin, but they speak Spanish well. And so they're very interested in working with the population. And it's been a really great learning experience for me to meet community that doesn't necessarily identify as Latin, but they are wanting to support that community and build connections with a lot of migrants who live in this area. I live in a more rural area, which is St. Cloud. It's like maybe an hour and a half from Minneapolis. So it's a little more rural.
Mhm, mhm. Small town vibes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, as someone from a very, very, very small town, um, how how is that feeling for you? Because 'Cause you're from a big city.
I am from a big city. So, I am from LA. So I grew up born and raised in LA. And so living in a town of, I think it's 7,200 people is small. So I live in St. Joseph, Minnesota, which is smaller than St. Cloud. St. Cloud's like the bigger city that's in my area.
Mhm.
Bigger city, and I'm going to use air quotes there. And it's different, it feels kind of, I don't know how to put it. It's very quiet, which I really appreciate. Now in my elder years, I appreciate being in the, more peaceful kind of a rural area, and that's why I was talking kind of about safety before, because I wasn't sure how I would feel,
Mhm.
as a queer person, in a space, a queer brown person in a very white space, how I would feel. And it's been very welcoming and, but still not LA.
Right. You
Mhm.
can always visit, there's planes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So you do feel safe, which is great. Do you think you've cultivated feeling safe on your own and that's why it feels safe? Or is it because the people are generally safer than you thought they would be? Or both?
Yeah, I would say the people have made it feel safer, and there's a term they use here called the Minnesota nice. So they will be super nice to your face and great, and they may not agree with it, with whatever, but they're going to be very nice and they're never going to be rude and it's going to be very welcoming. So I think I'm leaning into that and just
Hmm.
saying, okay, if they're being, I'm taking it at face value. So if they're being nice to me to my face, I'm taking it at face value. I also think uh, having my partner with me makes it a little more accessible. So I'm not doing things alone necessarily all the time. And also the community I work with at work and the other faculty in my department are so great. Just to be able to connect with them and build that smaller community at work, and then the community with my students. And I mean, you know this, I tend to be very relational in how I connect to people and my classrooms and my clients. And so building that has helped in my classroom has helped me establish a feeling of safety and connection to the area.
Wow. Okay. Um, was there a time in your life when you think you wouldn't have felt safe in the same space?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, because I've been out, and by out I mean I've been openly gay my whole life, but when I was 14 is kind of when I went to my first Pride in West Hollywood and did all of these things. So as I got older and transitioned, I think in my 20s I probably wouldn't have felt as safe here. But now as an established person, older than 20, I'll just say that. Uh,
Listen, you've called yourself an elder, now you're established. I'm not
I
used to this
mean,
version of you.
I mean, it's the reality, right? And an elder can
Okay.
be, it fluctuates, right?
Mhm.
Subjective, right? Um, so, and actually, I'm going to stop there for a second. I was called an elder by a person in their early 20s. They called me an elder queer, and I about died. So I'll just say that first. And then once the shock wore off, I decided, I'm going to own that because I've actually been able to survive to this age and been, able to support queer people in my own identity and my community throughout the whole time. Um, yeah, and I totally lost the question. You asked me something.
It's
Sorry.
fine. I was asking you if there was a time in your life when you would have felt,
Oh.
unsafe in where you currently are, and you were telling me about,
Mm.
um, pride events at 14.
Right. And so, yeah, right. So I was going because I think when I was younger, I would party a lot, and drinking is such a big part of the queer community for my age group. That's where we found safety. And so there was a lot of alcohol. I'm sober now over 3 years. And so that's not something that I really connect with anymore. But I think that if I was younger and drinking a lot, I wouldn't feel as safe to be part of the queer community at large in such a rural space.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, Unfortunate and interesting things can happen when there's substances around,
Yeah.
um, and people can feel more emboldened and entitled.
Right. And I do think that there is space. I do hold space and room for people who do want to have drinks and have a great time and party. I think for me, there was no stopping point. Because once I opened the floodgates and I was at a bar, then everyone was getting shots. I was paying, and there was, 12 shots later and as many drinks later. It's a great night and it's now 7 a.m.,
Mm,
and that's kind of it's all or nothing is my personality. And once I recognized it, I thought, okay, let's just stop. Let's just stop that.
gotcha. Yeah. So I've been asking around this question of safety because it is not I mean, as a Black woman in America, I know what it's like to kind of not feel safe most of the time anywhere. Um, but I feel like the foundation is shifting around the types of safety for your communities. Um, would you be willing to speak to that?
Sure. I mean, I can speak for me personally in my experience.
Mhm.
Um, I think having the privilege I hold as, a cis 6'5" large man in a space, um, tend to hold an education privilege and all of the things that come being born in this country privilege. Um, I think my experience is very different than migrants who are coming into this country, like my mother, who was undocumented for many years. And I remember what that's like. So I think it's different. And I do worry when the police go by. I do every single time when I'm driving. So safety, when I say I feel safe, is kind of relative, because I do feel it in that, I'm safe in the areas I've been in so far, but also when the police go by, I'm scared because I don't know what's going to happen. And again, I am a citizen. I guess sometimes that doesn't matter, and they could still do whatever they're going to do. And because I'm brown and, the things, right? Um, yeah. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, there was a raid in Chicago a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Um, which there are some sound bites from it that are really uncomfortable as far as Black people saying, "Well, I thought they weren't looking for us, they're looking for, um, Hispanic people." Uh, but Black Americans were detained and arrested in that space, as well as brown people. Um, and it just seems like it's expanding, and it's making me uncomfortable. Um, and then I think about my own privileges and how, yeah, I left the country. And more people are starting to um understand why I did, more of my friends, and they're like, You got out, we're coming, we're gonna visit. Which has been sweet, but also unsettling because it feels like the reality that we live in, there's an overarching not safeness. And then there's tremendous safety in certain spaces with the people that we care about and love. So
Yeah. And I think I should clarify. I have an exit plan. So I feel safe in that helps me be able to get through my day, do my work, go to the store, do the things I need to do to kind of compartmentalize what is happening in the world, and again, it's my privilege that I can do that. But I do have an exit plan in that do have Mexican citizenship. I can move out of the country. I have gone down to Mexico, as you know, to kind of look at different situations. And that is, even though at the moment we're not planning to move, that is always in the back of my mind. That is always something that will happen if it needs to. And unfortunately, if I start to think about what's happening in the world and kind of the the future doesn't feel safe. And in this moment right now feels safe. The future does not feel safe because, as you said, things continue to get worse and it's not changing.
I will say that I wholeheartedly agree and understand. So I'm gonna ask a more clinical question,
Sure.
which is so for therapists, we talk about safety planning. That usually comes up when someone has suicidal or homicidal ideation, and then we're required to document their safety plan and make sure that they have ways of support. Um, I kind of feel like there should be a safety plan for this, for what we're talking about now. Um, and I know because it struck me when you said exit plan, right? Um, which I had and I took, went right out the escape hatch.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. And I'm wondering if maybe together we can sort of brainstorm what a safety plan slash exit plan might look like for someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I will say first that everyone's situation is obviously different in terms of financial resources and what that looks like. But I think
Mhm.
um, in general for people's kind of emotional well-being and mental health, especially marginalized populations in this country right now. I think it's important to think about, don't live in the space of, if you can, not live in the space of fear in every moment, but think about, if something happens, then what, right? So what
Mhm.
is your breaking point? What is your red line where this is where I'm pulling the emergency cord? What does that look like? And then work backwards from there to be able to set yourself up financially, or places you can stay in other countries, or, and I would say with friends and family, but not in this country necessarily, you know? I
Mhm.
think um, even blue states, even states that are safe, you know, quote unquote safe cities, aren't safe anymore. So I think really starting to think about how you can start that process. And I think a lot of people have already started to do that from conversations I've had already with people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, for me, it wasn't like, because I left in 2022. So it wasn't purely political, like, oh, I don't like who's in charge, or, I mean, not that I loved who was in charge, but it wasn't like, um, my day to day feels unsafe and so I'm leaving. I know people felt that way during um, stay at home orders during the pandemic, or in 2026, during, that election cycle. Like, so I came, like, it was a slow burn for me. Um, but I left because of the affordability and my mental
Mm,
health. So I was just finishing up grad school and it was time to go get a full-time job as a therapist. And I said, I don't want to. I was like, working in community mental health, God bless the people who do. Um, I don't have that type of stamina for those types of cases, and to have a caseload of 30, 40, 50 clients. Um, so I moved where I could cut my expenses because for a lot of reasons, my support system is me when it comes to certain things because of my family structure. So that was a huge part of why I left. And then now there's all of these other reasons to not go back when I thought I would have been back more,
right.
right?
Hmm.
Um, but when it comes to the safety, I would agree and echo everything you've said about people having different support and resources. And I really like the note you mentioned about being someone who um, isn't rooted in the fear right now, but is thinking of, knows where the line would be so that you can have a day to day that is not driven by anxiety. I deal a lot
Right.
with that with clients who are, every news story, every news cycle, there's something to make you feel more and more unsafe.
Right.
Um, yeah, okay, so I had to take a break just now because I realized even speaking about it is activating. And my thoughts weren't coming together the way that I wanted them to. It's 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 devastating. That's the word I have for it. And to be someone who's watching it from afar, it confronts my privilege in a way where, like, I was never raised with privileges. So it's this like, oh, I really should be helping. And then I remember that I am, because I live here so that I can do a lot of support services for people who are there. Um, but it's a lot. Um, and I also think my capacity to live in it has gone down
Mm,
because I've been out of it. Like, my nervous system, anytime I'm back in the States, is like, what are you? Like,
right.
I can feel it. And many of my friends who are here as foreigners and immigrants, when they go back to their countries, they feel the same way. Um, and so honestly, my support for people is come visit, come hang out and get a break. And if you want support on what it looks like to move or what is required, I've been through that process and I can help. because I'm over here talking about how to be safe in a place that's just not safe, and like I don't know how to normalize it.
I think you allowing or creating space for people to come and visit and see what that's like and what it's like to be in Mexico is such a great resource, you know, because there are it feels like we're getting really close to anyone who is marginalized to be able to find the exit plan immediately and get out and what that looks like, right? And so I know we don't want to go back to that conversation, but I did want to say that it's important when people feel dysregulated, when they're in it and thinking about it, taking a breath and really writing everything down if possible, to just kind of write it down, externalize it a little bit, think about what plans you have in place to get you out of that situation. That might help to kind of externalize the thoughts and also have a plan in place that you can look at later. If you get too activated, step away, do something else, go take a walk, you know, if that feels safe, but also being able to come back to it and add to it as you're working on it. Yeah, as you're thinking about your future.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, the thing that is playing in my mind, I've been reading Parable of the Sower, um, which is a book about literally this year, but it was written in the 70s. Um, and one way to describe it would be like Handmaid's Tale, but for Black people. So it's this post-fall of the pillars and things in society that we think hold it up, where you have to pay money to get the cops to come or to get the fire department there, and there's so much poverty that anyway, it's just this dystopian vibe. And the main character makes like an emergency earthquake kit, is what she tells people it's for, but it's because she knows there will be further crumbling. I don't recommend reading that book right now because it's really heavy.
Yeah.
Uh, but there is something about just having one thing you know you would do when you're at max.
Mhm.
So it's like, this is one person I could call. This is one person I know I could show up at their house or at this sanctuary, or we would meet in this park, or something. Uh, so that because it gives the current state of yourself a bit more peace if you know the first thing you would do in an emergency.
Yeah. I mean, I think it reminds me of something I tell my clients as well, having like a psychological first aid kit. So for me, it's a box with like a stress ball. It's a box with like lavender essential oils, a favorite quote, the name of a song that I really love that just kind of makes me feel grounded and connected. So I can, you know, play it on Apple Music, just whatever it is that is going to help me, because when we're activated, we're not thinking clearly in that moment. So it's hard to think about what supports us when we can't even get out of what's happening in this moment, right? So having that box and seeing that, okay, open that up, or a bag or whatever it is, pull from that to be able to support ourselves, to be able to kind of take a beat, right?
Yeah, I love that so much. That's so good. Yeah, I need to start putting quotes into like a bag. My brain is picturing a Crown Royale, like the purple bag.
That's right. Absolutely. I don't have a Creme Royale bag, but
I know.
yes, that little
That's the
velvety
one.
bag. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I feel like this is a good point to transition into self-care because you mentioned that you're tired. It's been a lot of academic, I don't know, it's been a marathon for you.
Yes.
Almost. Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know if you want to list them all, but you have more degrees than what you listed as your clinical expertise.
Right. So I do have 3 master's degrees, almost 2 doctorates, and maybe 7 certificates, graduate level certificates. So that's a lot, you know.
That's a lot.
hmm and
Yes.
it is exhausting. And when I say I'm tired, I don't mean I'm tired physically right now. I mean basically I'm tired of being a student. Once my dissertation is conferred and I take the last 2 classes for my doctorate in Chinese medicine, I'm done. Like the well has run dry. There is no more anything to be able to study anything else. Yeah.
Got it.
hmm
Yeah. And then it's about educating counselors.
Yeah. And it is that now. And I think that I have those conversations with my students, and it's such an amazing, I am so hopeful and I'll just say this, I'm so hopeful for my students in the future of counseling, because my students here in rural Minnesota are doing the internal work, the self-reflection when it comes to talking about marginalized populations that aren't around them, talking about using pronouns and supporting people of different populations and wanting to learn more so they can be that voice for marginalized populations. And it makes me so hopeful. It's like that's what I feel like I'm doing. What I'm doing as a professor is hopefully helping the future clients that they're going to see. And it just makes me feel great. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of self-care is, like, fulfill purpose?
Mhm. Yeah. It's fulfilling my purpose. And I didn't know what my purpose was for so long. It was just kind of figuring out where I belonged and what I wanted to do in the clinical space I love, but also being in education and academia. Although publishing and presenting and all that is a lot of fun, it's a lot of work that isn't my favorite. I'll just say that the connection with students is my favorite.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, you've always been a connector of people.
Yeah, but it's funny you say that because I've only actually learned that what what my superpower is. I will say, like what it is in terms of building connections with people and building community and rapport in a space is something that I've done naturally my whole life. And I didn't realize it until I would say the last couple of years, which is weird. But, also I didn't really stop to take a beat to think about it.
Nice. Okay. Huh. So I wanna ask you, so they can feel seen, perhaps it's similar. Um, what do you do for yourself to not feel as tired emotionally?
Well, the first one I'm going to mention is probably reality TV, which is, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is my guilty pleasure because it is so far removed from my lived experience in terms financially and also where I'm living, but also I grew up in LA, so it kind of takes me home a little bit.
Mhm.
Obviously, I didn't grow up in Beverly Hills, but not obviously, but I didn't grow up in Beverly Hills. Um, so I think that that and also I just started knitting recently, and so
Oh,
that's been a very fun, interesting thing to do. Yeah, and cooking, I would say as well.
yes. Yes. I'm like, I should come to Minnesota for tamales.
Oh yeah. I mean, tamales, turkey, chicken, like anything that's like a roast or something in the oven. I love making that. And I think being able to, and for people who are listening who maybe want to figure out what they don't have time for, finding the small things they can do that fills their cup, right? So, like, if they'd like to cook, maybe just start with a soup. Put the soup on, put it on low, put some veggies in there and let it go. The smell will kind of help nourish you maybe while you're working in the kitchen on a laptop or whatever it is. Um, to start doing those things, but really um, be intentional about what you're doing and not just for the food, but for the actual process of cutting up the vegetables, adding a little different seasoning, like being in the moment and present, I think really helps.
Mm, that's beautiful. I'm gonna try it. It is now soup season.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm excited. Um, okay, so I wanna back up a little because, yes, we've been talking about the mental health domain because we share that. Um, but with physical medicine, like you studied Chinese medicine, you're about to have a doctorate in it. Um, why did you choose that modality? And how does it connect with sex therapy and counselor education and all the other things you do?
Yeah. So I chose Chinese medicine because initially I wanted to study naturopathic medicine, which is wonderful as well as I know you're a naturopathic doctor. And I thought Chinese medicine might align more with like curanderismo and natural healing in my Mexican culture. And it's funny because they are very similar in their natural healing ways. It is very much a mind, body, spirit connection to be healthy.
Mm,
Um, and so that's what kind of started me on that path. And I actually went and got treatment for Chinese medicine for my own conditions at school, at the school we went to.
mhm.
And I realized how much better I felt. And even though I'm just going to say it now, I'm going to warn people who go to get Chinese herbs, they taste terrible. So there is no way around that. I'm
They're
sorry.
so bitter.
They are so bitter. No matter what formula, and someone says it's sweet, it's not sweet. It's bitter. And it is what it is, right? But it does help. And so I think that going through that process physically myself and seeing the benefits of it made me want to provide that service for people who are in my community, which are marginalized populations, because I think that there isn't a lot of Latin people doing Chinese medicine, and especially Latin queer people, maybe in the kink community doing Chinese medicine, which led me to supporting people through sex therapy. So I was saying it's, Chinese medicine and working with the kink community, I think sometimes clients would come in and want to share, and they would share with me certain things, like I mentioned earlier, about intimacy and maybe if they're in pain. So needling them, and in different parts to help with pain allowed them to receive care from someone they trusted that wasn't judging them in Chinese medicine. And bringing those two together with sex therapy, you can actually needle someone and have therapy at the same time. And, seeing how different points work, or having ear seeds, if there's depression and anxiety, or if there's intimacy connections, what comes up. I mean, it's all just connected. So it makes sense to me and my clients.
Wow. Yeah, what's this one called on the top of the head? King tongue?
I do 20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yin Tong is here. Uh-huh.
Oh, that's king tongue.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I usually need both.
Yeah. Which, and they're great. Yeah, they're great points.
So also, I mean, you mentioned that you've always been interested in the unique healing traditions of your culture. Can you tell me what you've been learning about that and how all that lines up?
Sure. So I do have a couple of certificates in curanderismo specifically, and so it aligns because I think my people who are more indigenous, part of my people, do a lot of different kinds of healings in terms of herbs or temescal, so it's like a sweat lodge, different ways to heal our bodies. And I think curanderismo is so important to my community and mental health and the overall well-being of the people I work with, to be able to support them and meet them where they are by having discussions about the mezcals, about the herbs they're taking. And you live in Mexico, I'm sure there's a lot of different healing practices that go on in the country that you've probably been exposed to already.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, there is a massage. I was just looking at it again this morning. It's a couple that travels,
Mm,
and it's called Puzia,
okay.
and they use these stones that are sort of whittled into a spike, and it's like being needled. Um, they put it on the bottoms of your feet, on the palms of your hands, on part of your scalp, and there is a pain that comes with it, but its intention is to bring up what needs to be released, and then it's a four-hand massage. They're both with you. Um, and it's a ceremony and it's a ritual, and they move through and do body energy and healing work, which is really beautiful. So I have experienced that, and yes, I've experienced Temazcal, um, which we're going to be having one at my retreat in December, the Temazcal,
Oh,
which
nice.
it is a sweat lodge, and it's so interesting. I've had people interact with the idea of it where they're like, "Oh, I would love to do the retreat, but I don't want to get hot and sweaty. Why would I do that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's not what a temazcal is. You will." And it's an entire ceremony and ritual. You are calling on the land, you're calling on ancestors, um it's important to ground into a space when you're going to be doing other healing work there. Um And so anyone who is like, "Yeah, I wanna opt out of the sweaty part, but, like, I'll come do plant medicine," or I'm like, this retreat's not for you."
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it
yeah.
sounds moving, just like transformative, because
Mhm.
it is so important to sit in that space. And I think, you know me, and I am the person who doesn't want to get sweaty and hot. However, it's different when we're talking about sitting in a space with a community, if it's a bigger sweat lodge and we're all doing it together, or if you're doing it individually, however you do it.
Mhm.
But that transformative space of being quiet and centered and warm and held by that experience really is transformative. And I think um it's important to not just let it go, because I hate being sweaty. I am the one who's like air conditioning all the time. But after that, you feel such a weight has been lifted, and everyone's different, of course, but that's
Mhm.
my feeling when I do it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and when I did it, it was with a couple, an indigenous couple on the East Coast. So we were in Quintana Roo.
Mm,
So different state, different energy, different vibe. But he spoke Spanish. She didn't speak any English or any Spanish. She only spoke her indigenous language. But together, we were all singing the songs and chanting, and they let you participate where they're like, well, now we're calling on abuelos. So you can state their name if you want to connect to them, or if you want to go back generations to people you never met those people. Um, but this is the energy of grandfather. And then you can offer your own prayer. Like, it was so beautiful to be included in that space in that way.
yeah. The community that comes from working with the Latin population, I'm going to say Mexico because we were in Mexico, but
Mhm.
like the indigenous people there, and being from a collectivist culture where that community and being welcomed in, is that energy must have been amazing in there, because physically you're healing, but also emotionally and connecting to other energies in the space. It sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something to be said about going through a physical and spiritual challenge as part of release. I've noticed that with indigenous healing practices. I mean, there's cleansing that happens, but a lot of times it can be uncomfortable. Um, Even if you're like, oh my God, there's so much sage, I want to cough. Or if it's the heat, or if it's the um what you're experiencing being taken through something. Maybe the drums that are playing have you feeling
Right.
something that you have to suddenly express. All of that is part of it.
Right. And I don't know if you've had ventosas. So it's
No.
fire cupping, but it's Mexican curanderismo fire cupping. We call it ventosas in the healing. So yeah, I think if you, and I think I remember you liking cupping. So
Okay.
might be something you might want to try at some point.
Yeah. Okay. I have my challenge.
Yeah.
Entonces.
Mhm.
I can find it. Okay. So what is like a perfect, maybe that's a weird question, but if you could design a session for someone, um, and maybe it's, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know how much time you take, but what would that look like?
I mean,
I know. You're like, I need to know what the case and the presentation.
right. It depends on the presentation, depends on the person. But if we're talking
Mhm.
about just intake and,
Sure.
maybe just getting started and I don't really know what's there,
Mm-hmm.
typically a sex therapy intake is about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's a very long process, similar to naturopathic medicine or like a homeopathic intake.
Mm-hmm.
And so similar to that, there's a lot more questions that are involved, a lot more intimacy questions, more intimate questions. But ideally after that, if they want acupuncture as well, it would
Mm-hmm.
be, talking to the client, doing the intake, needling them, and then having a discussion and therapy session after that with needles in, and then taking them out. What, because usually, and you've gotten acupuncture, I would imagine.
Yes, I've
So
gotten it from you.
yeah, I know, but I didn't want to, HIPAA. I didn't want to say anything. So you could say, but
I mean,
y-
student trainee stuff. There's no, yeah, HIPAA. I get it, but we're fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So yes, so there is a lot of emotional release during needling. So there's an ability to kind of, the walls come down anyway. So being
Mm-hmm.
able to provide therapy and have the client listen, or listen and also share mainly all of their information on what they want to share, it just opens up those kind of channels to be able to create that dialogue in the space.
Yes. Wow. I love it. I will say I'm capable of certain physical interventions, but I don't do them because I work virtually most of the time. Um, but I think it's so beautiful to be able to weave an element of touch and connection and alignment. Because listen, when you said emotional release or with with acupuncture, and yes, when the meridians start lining up, and you didn't expect it, you know, if anyone has not had acupuncture, I will disclaim this because I don't know if they always put it in the informed consent.
Right.
But there are points that are more physically painful that can bring up a lot because you're like, "Why is there a pain point there?" Um, and it goes away. But then there are also points that bring up emotion.
Hmm.
Um, it's like yeah, and it can feel sudden. Um, and a lot of acupuncture style that I've known of, they kind of needle you. They do a little intake, they needle you, and then they let you cook
Hmm. Hmm.
for 15, 20 minutes, and they leave and they come back. Um, and you're in there having that emotional situation by yourself. So what you're
Right.
actually speaking to is being with someone while they're regulating.
Right. And I think that you bring up a really good point because it's sometimes it is the points and the it can be the points, but it can also be the trauma associated with being in a very vulnerable situation with needles in your like on your body and then being left alone in a room. Right. So, right. The abandonment or trauma of that potentially is it's a wonderful treatment, and having the added training of being a therapist provides an extra level of comfort yeah. Hmm.
Yes, yes, because I have been there and they ask, "Do you want the heat lamp here?"
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
"I can't put a blanket over all of you because there's needles here, but we can put a towel in the middle, where to warm you up a bit, and I'll be back." And when that door closes, you are alone. And I'm someone with abandonment trauma. If anyone listened to my brother's episode, you know that. And it can really feel like you're counting down. When are they back? Yeah.
Right.
So thank you for being that person who
Yeah, no,
fixes me.
absolutely. I mean, and my goal is I'm not seeing people physically right now in Minnesota because I've just moved here, but my
Mhm.
goal is to become licensed in Minnesota and open a practice here where I can actually do both together here. I think that it's so needed, and I think there should be more training around that, of holding space for the client. I will say I have worked with patients with Chinese medicine who were vets or,
Veterans.
veterans, excuse me. Yep. And so didn't want to sit in the space by themselves. And I would sit with them. But the conversations from clinicians in that training space didn't understand why. And I'm wasting time because I'm doing my notes, I'm sitting with the client when it's what they needed.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Or, ideally, you would have multiple clients in multiple rooms and be able to, you know, book the hour out with
Right.
multiple people.
Hmm.
Um, but connection's more important.
Right. And when your scope is you can only see certain, you can only do acupuncture and therapy. So you're going to see people every 15 minutes. You're seeing 3 people in an hour, 4 people in an hour. If that's your scope, that's fine. But if you can be a therapist and sit in the space and do more, then
Mhm.
takes it to another level.
Wow. I love that outside of the box thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here for next level. Mhm. Okay. So if you had the opportunity to leave the world, because I have no idea who will listen to this podcast,
Wow.
with some advice that may come from a place of you leaving your hometown, it may come from a place of being so intensely educated in what that has brought you. It may be from being a queer elder. Um, what would you tell people?
I would say, I mean, there's a few things, but I would start with just do it. Just do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter if you want to go to school and study whatever. If you want to do what makes you happy and fills your cup, because none of the rest of it is going to matter in the long run.
Hmm.
Um, I think it can be really easy. And I know it was for me, and I'll speak for myself, to not know what to do. So then I didn't do anything. Yes, I have lots of degrees now, but I didn't start to go to college until I was in my 30s because I felt very lost and I felt very judged. I didn't know. I was always trying to be something, but I didn't know what that something was. And that really held me back, and I think that if I could say something to myself in my, early 20s, it'd be do it. Just go out and do it and have a great time. And that goes to ask the person out you want to ask out with, have all the wonderful sex with all the people you want to try out and have sex with, because all that judgment, no one cares. No one, they're all doing their own business. No one cares. Right. So to me, that is a piece of advice um, that I think is really important, is just to do it and honor who you are and be comfortable with who you are, because we're all just trying to make it.
Mhm.
I think a lot of us, I was in a meeting recently, and my department chair asked me, we picked cards, and the card said, oh, what did it say? It said, what do you thank your mentor or person who trained you before? What would you thank them for if you saw them? And I immediately thought I would thank them for allowing me or teaching me how to be my authentic self in every space, because I often feel that I can't be queer, I can't be silly, I can't be, I can't, I need to be professional. And
Mm,
I use air quotes because I don't, what does professional even mean? Right. And coming from, me, so coming from LA and coming from an area that was, there were a lot of gangs in my area, a lot of shootings, a lot of stuff going on. I always felt imposter syndrome and felt like I
mm,
had to act a certain way to be taken seriously. And she taught me that show up as you are, no matter what. People are going to take you or they're going to leave you. It doesn't matter. You will continue to go move forward, and things will be great because you are who you are. So all of that to say, sorry, I'm very chatty there. All of
no,
that
it's
to
okay.
say is be show up as you are and be your authentic self in the space, whether that's speaking with an accent, whether that's being overly flamboyant, whether it's whatever it is, and if people don't like it, they can turn away or they can not be part of it, and that is a privilege for me to say that now, having education, and I recognize that. Um, but still, I think that the world is changing, and I think you can do that.
It's beautiful. It's like I've wasted a lot of time not being my whole self. I don't know why we've lived in societies that encourage that, but we don't have to.
We don't, and I'm going to say just one last thing on that.
Mhm,
The young students who, and I keep going back to the young, I'm telling you, I'm old. I'm already saying these young whippersnappers, yeah, these little kids, all, but they're not little kids. They're in their 20s.
mhm,
But the conversations they're having about body acceptance, about who they are, queer identities, it is so wonderful to see that they're not necessarily bound by that as much. And they really support one another, to accept each other for who they are, and they're having those conversations. So I think my message is more for people my age and maybe 30s, 40s, 50s, who are still caught in that loop, of like, I am not, I need to be what? No, none of it. I
mhm.
should be. Don't should yourself to death, because it's not, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can change.
Hmm.
You can have spent 20 years doing something and then go, "Actually, I wanna go back to school. I want to never be in a school again. I
Right.
want to, um, become an artist. I wanna take singing classes just for me. I wanna" There's so many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, pick a career, pick a track, and that's just what they're going to do. I'm going to
Mhm,
be this person, and that's great. And that if that makes you happy and that brings you joy every day, but if you decide, like you said, after 20 years, I'm going to be an artist and start sculpting. Oh my gosh, do it. If you have that opportunity to make and it makes you happy, just do it. Everything else, and I think you and I have had other conversations about this.
mhm.
It's funny how once we get on a path, the universe kind of starts to open doors up
Yes.
and align for you, right?
Mhm. That's my word for the year, alignment. It's my
Alignment. Love it.
Yeah. I picked my birthday word, and it's alignment.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna pull a oracle card. This is literally basically what you just said.
Yeah.
Um, both of 'em. Okay. So there's these 2. They look quite similar. I will read them.
Okay.
They say, I let the universe catch up with my dreams.
Mm, I love that.
And the other tells us, when I truly surrender my desires to the universe, a mighty force of faith can set in.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It actually reminds me of a Paulo Coelho quote,
Oh, gosh.
and I'm gonna paraphrase because I don't remember exactly what it says, but
Mm-hmm.
it's from The Alchemist, and it says, keep moving as if the world is conspiring to your success, basically. So don't, and it's so true. Just keep assuming that everything is going to go in your favor, and it's going to end up the way it's supposed to be. And I love that.
Amazing. Amazing. Um, well, I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. Um, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope everyone gets a lot out of it.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Kay. And yeah, thank you for creating the space. And I think what you're doing and the conversations you're having are so needed. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. And until next time, bye.
Adios.